All right. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Dani. Here we are again.
Here we find ourselves here again. Today we have a special topic. It's a very educational session. Something that I'm definitely not familiar with. This is kind of your wheelhouse. Alliance for Parking Data Standards, also known as APDS.
APDS. What is that? People are saying.
John, what is APDS?
What is APDS? Alliance Parking Data Standards. Pretty important in the industry. However, the average person listening to this show is going, what is that? APD? Is that the payroll company? APE? What is that? No, it is not. So, as we get into this, the Alliance for Parking Data Standards is an organization that was, I'm not sure where it started, but there's a group of parking professionals that started this organization. I know that there is the IPMI has done several presentations on it. So to the average listener is probably saying, what the...
Right. So there are three, just to clarify, there are three different founding organizations for APDS, which is IPMI, International Parking and Mobility Institute, European Parking Association, and British Parking Association. So those are the three different founding organizations for ADPS.
Yes. And so I think really when we're talking about this and we're looking at this, it's really about how our industry is sharing data. And I think the push here is to try to get a standard in which everybody shares data so our industry can be plugged in to the rest of the world in a common way that makes it easy, right? And I think right now, I think our industry is not doing that, and it makes it very difficult, challenging, and probably costly to share data, right?
Can PRRS is very data driven. So can you give us an example of how and why you think that we're currently not, as an industry, doing this properly?
So, I guess from our standpoint, I'd just highlight some of the challenges that the industry probably has right now. I mean, sharing data is a necessity, right? And we hear about, mobility and smart cities and all of those buzzwords that go around the industry. Sharing data is a necessity for that. And so if our industry is going to connect to the rest of the world, we need to solve this and get a standard. So that's one challenge. Entities expend significant effort and cost to share data. And that's kind of what I said before. It's like, there's no standard. So you and I have different softwares and we're going to try to connect, but you're speaking Spanish and I'm speaking English, and it's very costly to try to get those two things connected. So I think that's a challenge. And then the other challenge is all these software platforms are using different terminologies and formats, So it's like there's no standard. So you might call a parking space, space dot, and somebody might call it space square, in that Matrix world. Is that what was that movie? Yeah. So that's a challenge. And then you've got, I think with the standards make it easier to create and share and integrate data. So I think that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish. And so from our software standpoint as an industry, obviously there's a lot of data coming in that we're collecting. And so we want to share that in a manner in which our customers want us to share that, and making it easier to share that and, with some consistency reduces costs. And again, as I said, it helps us connect to the rest of the world, right?
So before we started the episode, we were kind of having some side conversation, and there are a few different industries that we think share data across their platforms and do it very well. Why do you think Why would we not want to share that data across our platforms in our industry? And are there disadvantages on sharing data?
Well, let's face it. I mean, as I've said in other episodes, we're talking about parking, right? And so I think there's still people out there that are kind of, if you recall in previous episodes, we talked about, we were like one of the last industries to take credit cards, right?
Oh, still are.
Yeah,
There's a lot of, there are some operators who still cash only.
So here we are with, something as important as this. And so I think there's still people out there that are paranoid, it's like, oh, if I share my data in this manner, there's still people that don't want to share their data. And so I think that's a mistake. Sharing data and getting this information out there allows people to make better decisions, right? And I think that's what we're trying to get. And let's face it, it's not just about sharing parking data as well. I mean, we're talking about, mobility services, delivery services, robots on sidewalks, traffic lanes and queuing areas, other uses for sidewalks and curbs. I mean, we're talking about a lot of stuff, right?
Absolutely. I mean, do you think that this is a future of bringing smart cities together, right? I mean, from an off-street parking standpoint, valet, public transportation, EV charging, which is very hot in the industry right now, on-street parking, micromobility, and other things, right? These are all of the things that need to come together in order to create a smart city parking landscape.
Correct. I mean, you're spot on. It's kind of like, if we're going to be a smart city, let's connect all the marketplaces, right? Connected vehicles, auto OEMs, marketplaces, mobile payments, marketing and ticket platforms, operator owner digital tools, all of that stuff. And so if we come up with this standard like Europe has, and we want to get a couple guests on, because again, like everything, we could talk about this probably for a couple hours. People would probably fall asleep if it was a couple hours, but there's some experts that can offer and shed some light, and hopefully we're doing that here, highlighting, and getting the message out how important this is for our industry. So, we'll probably do a part 2 to this show later down the road with a guest, because Europe has done it well. So I think there's a couple folks over there that have expressed interest in coming on and sharing how it worked over there.
We're a little behind the times here.
Yeah. So I think, Dani, you mentioned this before, but some of the founding organizations, I think IPMI was one, European Parking Association, British Parking Association. Mm-hmm. So I think some of the folks we would get on would be from the British Parking Associations. So objectives, what do you think the objectives are, Dani, with APDS? Not to be mistaken with APD, the payroll company.
I think it's ADT, or is that the security home system?
Yeah. Sorry, folks, we're confusing everybody.
ADT, ADP. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like the objective here is enabling entities to spend more resources on innovating with their data.
Absolutely. So let's focus on being the creators that we are, being innovative, coming up with all these great ideas that you come up with. We're going to focus on that and not be bogged down with, when Dani wants me to connect to Seth, and his data platform, that I'm not scratching my head and spending all this money and time and resources, right? We can focus on innovation, I guess, right?
We are a very innovative industry, so.
That's right. So, again, very important, helping our industry grow, helping us connect the world. Kind of what does the landscape look like in this process, right? You've got automation, You got curbside management, you got parking management, broadcast traffic, travel information, traffic management,
mobility and public transportation.
That's right. And so traveler data, automated valet parking, existing, transmodal. I'm using terms that are probably way above my head, but I think the listeners.
Don't worry, I won't ask you to define them for me.
Are we having a quiz after this? If we're having a quiz, folks, I'm gonna fail that quiz. No, but again, I think there's some listeners out here that are pretty familiar with this stuff, right? So they're going to be like, wow, great. And there's other people like us that, kind of hear this before. If you talked about this a couple of years ago, I would have been like, what? So, just getting trying to make the familiarity of this and the importance. So,
well, I think in our industry now, we're obviously very data driven in very many different aspects of what we do. And so now that's when we go to, when we talk to a lot of our clients, a lot of the asset owners, they want data. They're very data driven, and they want one of the first questions that they ask is, can you share your data with us? Why not? Yeah.
Right. I think the intent, going back to that question that you asked me, why wouldn't people want? I think, again, recognizing not everybody not everybody needs to share all of the data, right? There's specific data that's important that helps this connection to the world. So I think, for those people out there that are paranoid, like some of the data is going to get out and, confidentiality, or it's going to hurt their position in the marketplace somehow, they could rest assured that not all of that data it has to be shared in order to make this. But again, I think it comes back to find common definitions for the industry and the data concept. That's one intent. I think establishing acceptable formats and sharing the relevant data that's important.
Well, and I think sharing data across different technologies, I think, is something that this is what we're touching base on here. But I think it's so important for different assets, right? You have airports, you have venues, and when one technology doesn't necessarily want to share the data with the other when it feeds into it, then we can't run an efficient operations, because there's not one company that does everything. They don't space counts. We're running into that now at a lot of our arenas, is that we need different technologies to talk to each other so we can essentially come out with one result.
Exactly. And I think that the Alliance for Parking Data Standards, I think the scope, I guess you would call it, would be, sessions. If I was to draw on a whiteboard, which we do have a whiteboard behind us, by the way.
We can have a whiteboard session.
We could have a whiteboard. So sessions would be a standard. Place data, equipment and service data, permissions, rights, parking mobility, kind of compliance, rates and quotes, as you said, occupancy utilization, and then observations, right? Identifying objects, identifying Ubers, identifying delivery vehicles, all kinds of things, kind of managing who's using those assets. And I think we talked about that in other sessions. So I think, again, the actual specification, I think if I had to put my finger on it, would probably be, a model-driven approach would be one bullet point. I think full UML data models with all terms defined would be another one. And if you asked me what UML was, I'd probably go, whoa. Sorry, folks.
Let's back up. Please tell me what UML data is.
I know. I'd like to know too. Just reading from my research, I'm not a tech, I'm not the.
What do you mean?
I'm a tech. I know just
you're
enough.
You're a tech master, John Conway.
I know just enough to be dangerous, but if I actually have to, I'm not the guy that actually, I just think of an idea and then look at the guy or gal and say, oh, can you do this? We can do that.
Can we make this happen?
We can make that happen.
I know how that goes. I'm like, hey, John, can we, I need this problem solved. Can you do it? Of course I can.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And then there's people scratching their head, the developers going,
like, why would you say that you could do this?
What person did this? I want their name.
And I hold my vendors to their word. I'm like, do you remember that conversation we had 3 years ago on a Tuesday night at 7 p.m. when you said that you would do this? And we're here now.
I'm the guy. I said they could do it. And then the developer's calling. Somebody from the back office is saying, I want to know who did that.
Like, so how's the development coming along on that feature, Conway? I'm right on top of it.
Sales department. Anyway, back to the specifications. So I think we've got API supportable messaging. Obviously, our industry is big right now on APIs. I mean, we've got a lot of
many things are very API based.
Right.
And it hasn't always been like that, right?
It hasn't. And there's challenges with it, There's certain, and that's, again, coming back to this, why this is so important in just my world. Some of the APIs, they don't have an endpoint. They don't have this. They don't have that. And, so it makes it challenging when you're trying to deliver a compliance service, right? So if there was a standard and way a lot of this was shared, it would be so much easier. And just from my vantage point, there's other people trying to lift gates and trying to do different things and connect with different software apps, So, and then I think, I don't know, if I had to do a last bullet point, it'd say integrates with many existing ISO standards and other national standards. I think those would be, 4 important points of having a specification. So
there's 2 different placements where we can, integrate this, and it's placement of locations and placement of equipment and services.
Yep.
Is one more important than the other, or is placement of equipment and services really dependent on placement of locations, do you think?
I think that in the way we talk about importance on this topic, I think it depends on what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish, right?
Right.
So for some people, I think, it would be very important from a location standpoint.
Whether it's on street, off street, surface lot, garage.
Correct. And even in those operations, what are you specifically trying to do, right? I'm trying to deliver compliance and occupancy and different things related to, people using the parking lot. Somebody else could be doing something else on the parking lot that is important to them, monitoring EV. Which is needed
Absolutely.
And coming to a theater near you.
Can't wait for that one. You heard it here first. Yep. I'll be one of the first to utilize that.
So again, having a standard placement of equipment and services, it's going to identify where equipment locations are. Example of equipment: bike racks, EV chargers, pay kiosks. People are opening doors, pedestrian doors, in our industry. There might be lockdown facilities, after hours, and people have parked in there during normal hours, and, they come in and they, access a door with their parking ticket or their parking receipt, right?
Which is something we need to perfect, because I have been locked out of many garages due to the lack of technology on the outside of the building, which is, and I've had many customers locked out of my own garages in operations. So
what did you do? Like you came back to the garage?
Yeah, we would have to. Yeah, I mean,
so you Uber home?
No, well, when I was in operations, we would have to physically send someone to the location to manually let people in if the, if so like the technology,
hours,
if it wasn't working and for some reason, the technology went down, we would have to send someone over there to physically open the door and let people, groups of hundreds of people in to get their cars, at midnight, 1 a.m. Myself,
that's when I'd be old school on that
myself, one. You'll see me finding the nearest Windmaster, dragging it to the entry lane and pulling a ticket and getting myself in the garage.
The first time if I had to get up and let somebody in a parking garage at 2 a.m., I'd be putting up a sign that says, if you're not back, come back the next day and get your car. I actually
had to do this recently in Seattle where we got back to the garage, myself and a few friends, one of my girlfriends who's actually in the parking industry, and we couldn't get in the garage. It was still pretty early. It was like 7 p.m., but we ended up having to find a Windmaster, stick it in the entry lane, and there were tons of people. So I'm not proud that I showed anybody how to do this. But
you showed them how to take the metal sign over the loop.
Hey,
yeah,
we're downtown Seattle. Many people needed to get their car.
Right.
I was just in the right place at the right time.
You were doing a public service.
I was doing a public service.
Everybody hear that? Danny let people out for free.
No, did not let people out for free. We got people into the garage to get their car. And so essentially, instead of this operator of having many complaints come in and asking for free parking, everybody paid to get their car out.
Nice. All right. So, what are permissible activities and rights under this process as we go forward? I'd say, parking related, anything parking related, right?
Delivery services, mobility related,
anything of... Anything
Uber,
of that nature.
Lyft, yeah. Active mobility.
Again, deliveries. You know how many deliveries are being done in a downtown area? UPS, FedEx, all those trucks just pulling up using different places.
This is an issue in New York City, right?
Absolutely. I think it's an issue everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what companies are trying to solve, issues like that. So, which makes, this process even more important as you try to connect the grid, so to speak, the parking grid with the rest of the world.
So I think, and one of a big topic right now, is communicating rates between different platforms and systems, which so this would essentially allow rate information to be published across different platforms.
So important.
Absolutely.
Again, you've got the Spot Heroes, right? You've got Arrives, you got all these different platforms, and even what I've noticed, some people are calling addresses different addresses, right? And so, in some of the locations across the country, there's specific addresses related to licensing and excise and licensing. So, as customers get notices for non-compliance, they get a notice and they might complain to the city, and the city's like, we don't have a parking lot license there. Right. And so all that stuff becomes so important because, addresses, rates, everything should be communicated in the same way. Right. And so I think
you got to have standards, standards across the industry.
So again, as we go through this episode, it's from my perspective, I'd love to be talking about something else, but to be completely honest with you,
but this is so important
because it is important.
This this has more to do with your expertise,
right?
Than it does. I mean, then not that it doesn't have anything to do with what, my expertise, but this is very much your wheelhouse.
It is.
But you talk about this all day long, so I can see how you would rather be talking about something else.
I mean, there's other, exciting, but I think that's the point of why I wanted, why we wanted to share and talk about this topic, because it's not a conversation, right? When's the last time you had a conversation at like a parking show somewhere and had talking about this?
About
probably never, right? But we probably should, bring it up or at least have a conversation, So I think, I don't know if we can do anything on the show just to try to help get this message out there to everybody and how important it is. And again, I can't believe there's still people that, aren't sharing.
Who don't want to share their data?
Who don't want to share their data. I mean, I don't think if you're a company and you're hoarding and don't want to share your data, I think your future is not long for the parking industry.
Right. Well, and I think that there is an importance of sharing data with your customers, with your clients, asset owners across the board. Because essentially they're going to be able to take this data, use it to make future improvements.
Right. So did you know that the Alliance for Parking Data Standards has a Twitter and a website?
Of course I knew that.
So, yeah.
I already follow them.
So, I would, we encourage everybody to visit the website. We've touched on briefly. I mean, we don't have all day to sit here. We wanted to highlight this, but we encourage you to visit the website and Google this, and you can learn a lot about what's going on. And specifically, if you're a decision maker, right? Look at your organization, and if you're not a member, then join and find out what's going on and how you can standardize your data, right? I think there's an email that I'll give out. It's info@allianceforparkingdatastandards.org. So I'll repeat that. allianceforparkingdatastandards.org. And I think we'll put this on our page, our LinkedIn page, the information. So you guys, people out there, the Twitter handle is @APDS parking. Again, Twitter, APDS parking. And we encourage everybody. I think they have stuff on Facebook, I think LinkedIn, YouTube. And I think there's some pretty robust presentations out there that kind of talk about this stuff, right? So, and if you're in the software gig, you better get on board with the Alliance for Parking Data Standards. What do you think, Dani?
I'm on board. You convinced me.
Are you on board? Is everybody on board with the Alliance for Parking Data Standards? So that's kind of what this show was about today, and we hope we brought some attention to it. What do you think, Dani? Did we?
I hope so. Sure, hope so.
You look pretty excited over there.
I am excited. This is, we talk data every single day in what I do. So
we do, and we're going to continue to talk about data. So I think
we'll catch you next time.
Thank you. We'll see you guys later, and gals.